I find myself in, at their next meeting upstairs, and the folding chairs are in a half circle, and I'm sitting in the end chair with my back to the stairs. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, God, give me a little clue as to, you know, why am I here? And immediately I get the voice in my head saying, she's the reason you're here. And at that moment, all the kids say, hi, Stacy, who's coming up the stairs behind me. So I got chills like, okay, that's pretty clear.
Follow the compass home. Let the truth lead the way. You don't have to rush your knowing. It's been with you every day.
Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Inner Compass podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Barnes, aka the Logical Intuitive. I'm happy you're here, and just recap here. This is the Inner Compass podcast is where I'm going to be having guests be sharing their stories around when they listened to or ignored their inner compass. Maybe they heard it, followed the nudges, and are going to share their success stories, or maybe they heard it and ignored it and are willing to share their lessons learned. So we've got some interesting stories coming up in that. So I really want to encourage you to come back and listen to the episodes as they get released. In the first episode, just kind of shared what this podcast is about. And in this episode, I'm going to share some of my personal stories of how the inner compass messages and those whispers played a part in my life. So first of all, I want to just kind of say that the inner compass messages are I believe are our guides or angels that are trying to help us. And I want to emphasize that these messages are there to help encourage us and try to protect us. The messages are never going to tell you to do harm to yourself or others or do anything bad. This is the inner compass messages that I talk about are the positive guiding messages. And there's several ways that these messages can make themselves known. This is a lot of times, it might be just you're hearing a little soft voice in your head, and maybe an intuitive nudge, or maybe a gut feeling, or just a knowingness. And that for me, I've had them all. Sometimes it's a combination of any of those, or sometimes it's just one. Depends on what's going on with, what I'm working on or what I'm contemplating. And so anyway, just want to share some of the stories and how I've experienced the inner compass. And I've dealt with health challenges since I was a teenager, and that ultimately dealing with Crohn's disease. So I've had numerous surgeries over the years. My first one was really 50 years ago, actually. And after that surgery, I was at home working on a little craft project in the corner of the living room. And my dad was reading something in the living room on the couch there, and I told him, it's like, this is going to sound weird, but I've got this voice in my head saying, no, not yet, you're not through here. And he put down what he was reading and said, well, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. It's like, what do you mean? That's kind of an odd response. He says, well, they almost lost you twice on the operating table. And it's like, what? So I was not aware of that. And so it's interesting I also believe that, these, inner compass messages, they have a divine source to them. So I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. So I started paying closer attention to those little whispers in my head. And as the years followed, since I ended up having another surgery, and the message was just help others. And I'm thinking, okay, could you be a little more specific here? So during recovery, we wound up going to a campground and that, and just kind of, my dad and I were walking through the campground, and this person said, "Hey, would you like to have a sample of this milk substitute?" And I'd been having challenges with dairy and that, and it's like said, "Okay, fine." So I'll give it a try, and it was great. And so after we bought some product in that, and we went home from that camping trip, and I tried it and didn't have any issues in that. It was great. So I had this little kind of knowingness whisper back then. I wasn't really knowing what to call it, but just had this felt drawn to get involved and become a distributor, not only to help myself, but also others that maybe have a challenge. Well, about a year or less later, my folks were, back in Wisconsin visiting family, and my mom had left a sample of the product with one of my cousins back there. And when she had her baby, he couldn't handle any milk. I mean, she wasn't able to nurse him. They couldn't find any milk substitute. He was having allergic reactions, and they told my cousin that if they didn't find something that he could handle soon, he was going to die. So she's, of course, panicked thing, and well, it's just got a hold of my milk product back there and asked me so what to do, how to use it and that. So walked through that, and it turned out, they said that he should outgrow the allergy by his first birthday. Well, I was only able to get that milk substitute product for that first year of his life, and he literally ran out of it on his first birthday, and he outgrew it. So again, this was like a relatively minor surgery that led to us going to this campground and encountering this person with this milk substitute and getting involved and being the only thing that my cousin's baby could handle. And that's kind of where divine guidance and whispers all aligned in that to come together. And it's just, I mean, you look back, and a lot of times when you're in the middle of something, you don't see what's happening until you look back and you see all of how everything aligned and came together. So at any rate, then, several years later, I have another surgery, thinking, okay, I'll be another couple of weeks in the hospital, whatever, and multiple complications and everything. So I wound up being in there for about a year, during which time, because of the complications, I almost died several times, ended up in a coma for almost a week. And when I came out of that coma, my intuition was heightened, and those whispers became louder and more frequent. And I was able to, really start, I guess, acknowledging and paying attention more so to those whispers. And after the hospital stay, I mean, one of the messages that came out of that was, it was literally like shouting at me. It's like, help the kids. So a few months later, after getting out of the hospital, I met my church, and they announced that they're looking for a volunteer to, assist the youth director for the high school youth group. And I felt this nudge. It's like, check it out and that. So I find myself in at their next meeting upstairs, and the folding chairs are in a half circle, and I'm sitting in the end chair with my back to the stairs. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, God, give me a little clue as to, you know, why am I here? And immediately I get the voice in my head saying, she's the reason you're here. And at that moment, all the kids say, hi, Stacy, who's coming up the stairs behind me. So I got chills like, okay, that's pretty clear. And so over that year, since I just paid closer attention to her, and there wasn't anything really that came up until towards the end of the year. She came to me asking for, some guidance. She was, just wanted to tell her folks about something, and she wasn't sure how to share it with them. And I said, well, just tell them the same way you told me and stuff. They're going to understand. This is, she was kind of making it out to be more of a big deal than it really was. So she just was kind of working herself up, and I just, told her, no, just tell them the way you told me and that. So, that was the only thing that ever came up, but I built this trust relationship with her and the rest of the kids and that. So she felt comfortable coming for advice. And that all came from me listening to and following that whisper. So just in a work related stuff, so I spent 37 years as a computer programmer, web developer, and there were several situations where I'd be working on some project and kind of hit a point where I got stuck, and I'd just quiet myself, clear my thoughts, and listen. And those whispers would appear and help me. And same type of thing, I'd be working on a project around the house, and and have the same type of thing where whispers would guide me in that. And I also want to point out that it's not only for guidance, but these whispers and this knowingness and this feeling, they can also be, a form of comfort. They can appear to comfort us. And a couple of years ago, I ended up in the emergency room at the hospital, literally bleeding to death. They were pumping blood into me as fast as I was losing it, and they weren't able to, they were having a challenge trying to find the source of the bleeder. And about 1 a.m., the doctor comes into the room and asks, is it okay if I contact your emergency contacts and let them know what's going on? And my first thought was, why are you even asking? That's why they're on the list. I didn't tell him that, but it's just like, okay. So I told him, it's like, okay, go ahead. I don't know if, they'll answer at this hour, but, give them a call. And I thought to myself, wow, this is maybe more serious than I thought. And immediately I had this soft, comforting voice in my head say, don't worry, everything will be okay. And a few hours later, they found and stopped the bleeder. So a few months ago, I wound up having to have emergency surgery after a complication during a procedure. So while prepping me for surgery, there was a lot of people working on me, running around, getting me ready for the surgery, and it was just a lot of chaotic energy around me. However, I had this comforting message that everything would be okay, and I felt at peace. And so I didn't have any, stress feeling or anything during that time. And there's been other times too. This is where just not sure with some of the health challenges, and what should I do? And a lot of times it guided me. These whispers guided me to different products that have helped me. So again, just paying attention to those whispers, and they're there to help. And a lot of times we get so caught up in the busyness of our life that we don't stop to listen. So I want to kind of invite you to start paying attention and seeing how they're showing up in your life. I mean, this is like I said, that whether it's a whisper, gut feeling, a knowingness, it can be any or all of these things and that. So just kind of identify what it is for you and how it's appearing in that. And like during my coaching sessions, and so you'll see behind me, it says I got the logical intuitive. That's my little moniker, and that because I combine logic with intuition. Says I discovered that a few years back. This is that during coaching sessions, I'm kind of combining those two, and part of it, really, like I mentioned before, that year-long stay in the hospital after coming out of the coma, my intuition really got heightened. So many times during a coaching session, I'll get this intuitive hit or whisper that guides the session and that. So it's just another way that it comes into my life. So actually, this podcast is a direct result of the whisper. I wanted to be able to share this concept, and the whisper was create a podcast. So here we are. So like I said earlier, got some great guests coming on. Dang it. Get a little tickle. Got some great guests sharing their stories coming up on different episodes. So I want to invite you to come back and explore those episodes and, be inspired. Love to hear any comments on how you're noticing the inner compass speaking to you. Who knows? Maybe you'll be another guest on one of my episodes. So, and until next time, take care and keep coming back and like and share and subscribe. Thank you. Take care.